We are live. Jacqui, I think we can start. It's 9:32.
Thank you so much. Can you see me clearly, Johannes? I don't know if this is...
I can see you.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let me get going. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Goeiemorgen. I'm Jacqui Lick. I'm the Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Humanities at Nelson Mandela University. It is my very, very great pleasure to welcome you and our special guest speaker today to this Day of Digital Humanities. We are hosting it at the Nelson Mandela University in collaboration with the Digital Humanities Association of South Africa. And although we are gathering virtually and we can't see you, I hope that the connections that we forge today will be no less meaningful. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Escalator Project, who have set this precedent for the Day of Digital Humanities events in South Africa. I think they first organized the event in 2023. So the Day of Digital Humanities is an opportunity for scholars, practitioners, and enthusiasts worldwide to come together and to reflect on the impact of digital humanities on our work, our scholarly communities, and our daily lives. I'm not sure if you know this, but Nelson Mandela University has the revitalization of the humanities as one of our strategic goals. So we not only seek to foreground STEM, science, technology, engineering, but we also seek to revitalize the humanities. And we're very proud of this strategic goal. And as part of this project, we have highlighted the digital humanities as one of our core focus areas. I'll come back to that later, the digital humanities at our university. But what I'd like to talk to you about now is about this broader initiative that our celebration today is part of. It is led by CenterNet, which is an international network of digital humanities centers that fosters collaboration and cooperation to benefit DH and all its allied fields. So CenterNet not only enables DH centers to network globally, share tools, projects, and expertise, but it also provides a platform for projects that are maybe individual, isolated, to connect with the wider DH community. And through initiatives like today's Day of DH, the list of centers and its award program, CenterNet demonstrates the power of collaboration, advancing the field of digital humanities. So thank you very much to them. So let me talk now a little bit about our focus, which is the library. Many of our academic journeys have included trips to the library. Maybe I should say it should have included trips to the library. I think we can remember those quiet, contemplative spaces filled with shelves of books that held of the world's knowledge. And back in the day, those physical spaces were really essential to our research and learning. I think they remain spaces of gathering and learning for our students. Though today, those journeys increasingly include virtual access to libraries, archives, and other resources. And in that way, we break down barriers of time and geography. And the digital humanities has been instrumental in this shift, enabling us to digitize vast collections of materials, make them accessible, especially knowledges that have not been visible and evident in the academy. And it's accessible to anyone, with an internet connection, and for people to analyze them in innovative ways. And so today we want to reflect on how the humanities stays in touch with all the knowledges that are held by both virtual and physical spaces, and specifically explore the human factor, that is the librarian, without whom these collections would be non-existent. And before I hand you over to our moderator today, a quick reminder that CenterNet encourages you to celebrate by sharing your DH projects, your reflections, or ideas on social media. Specifically, they want you to reflect on what digital humanities means to you and how it shapes your day. Using the hashtag day of DH to 2024. I hope, Johannes, you can write it in the chat, just the hashtag, or that people can access it somewhere to connect with the global community. So we'll use this hashtag to connect with the global community, share your unique perspective on this dynamic world. And before we begin, I'd like to thank our Digital Humanities Hub at Nelson Mandela University. We're nearly a year old, if I'm right, Johannes. Today, I think we launched in, was it December, November last year? We were very proud to be the first university with a digital humanities hub nationally. I'd like to thank our hub and our coordinator, Dr. Johannes Sibeko, without whom this would not be possible, and just for the ideas. For today, I also want to thank the Digital Humanities Association of Southern Africa, our speaker, and all the participants for making the time to join us on a Monday morning. It is a beautiful day in our city. We welcome you and we look forward to an engaging and thought-provoking session. And I'm going to hand you over now to our moderator, who's going to introduce our speaker. Juneth Esau is our Faculty of Humanities librarian at Nelson Mandela University, and she's also a member of our faculty's Digital Humanities Hub. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and over to you, Juneth.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Juneth Esau, and I'm the Faculty Librarian for Humanities at the Nelson Mandela University. Welcome to everyone who attended today. I'm honored today to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Sanjin Muftić from UCT University. Dr. Muftić is a digital scholarship specialist, and he comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience. We are so grateful for the opportunity that he agreed to come and share with us today and share his expertise with us. Dr. Muftić, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me just turn on to set up the screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Sanjin Muftić. I just want to quickly just say hi, and also want to thank Nelson Mandela University's Digital Humanities Hub for inviting me to talk to you today about one of the projects that we're working on. It's really digital humanities, something that is really of great interest to me. So to be able to speak to it to you on this day feels really, really special, and I'm really grateful for the invite. And what am I going to talk to you about today? I'm going to talk about a specific project that we have been working on, or we worked on last year within the libraries. I guess it's not quite humanities because it's focusing on law, so it doesn't quite fit within that kind of faculty description. But I hope that by the end of it, you will see the relevance to it. And I'll also take some time to, my presentation is called 10 Steps to a Repository on African Law and Society, and just show you the process of how we built this particular repository and what it means for digital humanities. So I've structured the talk that I'm going to introduce a little bit of the team that I work for and the task that we were given. Then I'm going to take you through the task and the different steps that we did to get to finish off and create this repository. And then I guess I'll conclude by just putting out some of the takeaways and some further explorations. All right. So I work within a small team within UCT Libraries called Digital Library Services. Our whole mandate is to provide digital scholarship and research data services to the community of UCT. This comes in a couple of different, or as you can see here on the slide, a number of different types of services. We do digitization, and that digitization is always towards either some kind of online showcasing or preservation. And of course, in doing that and other aspects, we also do data curation, so organizing large collections of data for people towards any kind of showcasing or preservation. And of course, we try to support the university with research data management practices. So we spend a lot of time advocating for good practices. And we also have a small team that's dedicated to geographic information systems and working with spatial data and providing students and staff with support on those kind of platforms. And of course, all of these services are tied into the fact that we are a participant in the open science movement, and that almost everything that we do, all the resources are connected to making teaching, learning, and research more efficient, accessible, findable, and reusable. And hopefully you'll get to see an example of that in the case that I will talk about just now. And with that in mind, let's actually show you what I'm going to, the end result of what I'm going to talk to you about, and then I'll take a step back. I'm also going to put the link to the repository in the chat, so in any moment you can have a look at it while I'm talking if you want to kind of see some of the actual website. This is the repository on African law and society. It's hosted on one of our platforms. And here you have a collection of training manuals for magistrates that was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And what you can see on screen is just a little bit of a walkthrough of the repository and how the data, which is the PDFs of these manuals, and the metadata is organized and presented. And I kind of want to take you through how we got to this point as an example of like the digital humanities work, and specifically how library staff can support this kind of work. So this started for us by an approach from a department within the law faculty. They were the Law, Race, and Gender Research Unit. And they came to us and they said, we have a storeroom full of boxes that contains these manuals that were given to magistrates in the late 90s and early 2000s. That was part of their training to prepare them for the new South Africa. And they came to us and they said, well, these have been sitting in the storeroom now for close to 20 years. We want to make them available online for people to look at because we believe it showcases a rich history of the country and an important phase of it, together with also the valuable knowledge that's contained within these resources. And they came to the Digital Library Services for this, and we said, great, we can do this, we can help you out. Their overall aim, and it's kind of tied similar to what was already mentioned, that part of digitizing and the work that the library staff can do is to put the scholarship that is missing online and make it available online. So this is really what they had intended to do within the law faculty, that there was a gap in kind of African law and society scholarship, that it wasn't being found on resources online, and they wanted to address this through this project. So their aim in terms of this repository was to find a way to organize the different material, and in that way, by not only putting it online, but also being able to describe it properly, people could actually locate all of the different resources and use it for their research. Now, why this is relevant to us within the library, especially digital library services, because it's part of our digital curation kind of suite of things that we offer in terms of a service. And you can kind of see here in this graph, there are 4 key steps to this: the appraisal of an incoming collection, the ingesting of the collection, the management of it on a repository, and finally the preservation. And I'm specifically going to look at the fact that if we take this storeroom of manuals as a collection, what Digital Library Services worked on specifically was the ingesting and the repository management in order to kind of take it through this digital curation workflow and make it accessible online. So here are the 10 steps, and I'll kind of guide you through it, but I just want to lay it out to begin with. So step number 1 was looking at the manuals to identify metadata structure and the keywords. We then created a form for capturing of the keywords. We delivered a workshop on how to capture these keywords to the people who are going to actually do it. Then we actually allowed them to continue and collect all the different material not collect the material, but to collect the metadata about the material, and I'll talk about the importance of that. And that was all done before we actually digitized the material itself, redacted certain parts within the material, which I'll touch on as part of our ethics. And then when we move into the repository management, we would set up a metadata template on our repository. We would package that metadata for import, and then import the metadata and material together, and finally build and publish a site on Ibali. So those are the 10 simple steps that I'll take you through, and they form part of the ingestion phase, the first 6 steps, which includes digitization, and then the last 4 steps are part of what I would consider repository management. So don't worry, you don't have to memorize all of these. I'll take you through them one at a time and unpack them, and then of course you're more than welcome to ask questions about it. So let's look at metadata capture. That was our initial step, and this is really where we relied on the work of library staff. Because what we did to begin with is we took a sample of the manuals and we brought a team of library staff that included everyone from catalogers, data curation officers, members of the team within discovery services, as well as digital scholarship. And we sat in a room with about, I don't know, like a box, maybe 2 boxes of these manuals. And in this workshop that we did, by looking through it, our aim was to outline, well, what is the metadata that is we think would be necessary to capture about each resource that we would then have to put online. And this is where the collective brain thinking of library staff was so crucial, because we could pull together from the catalogers, we could pull from people who had experience with working with Dublin Core, but also at the same time recognize what is so unique about these manuals, because all of these workshops took place in different locations around the country at specific times. All of that forms part of the metadata we wanted to capture to make it easier for it to be found. And then once we had set up a structure, we did a little test run where we went through a couple, like about 20 manuals, and we focused on trying to use our structure to capture the metadata. And at the same time, we also added another layer where we started looking at, well, what are the key subjects or the key words that we could see could be repeated from one manual to the next, that we could then put as a almost controlled vocabulary for people to use. And that was really our step forward, so that we would be able at the end of this workshop not only have the metadata structure, but also have a pool of subject and keywords that could be used as drop-downs for further capturing of material, and also a set of more detailed instructions on how to capture the metadata. Because what we really wanted to do was to not have the library do all the metadata capturing work, but actually also hand it out and give it to the people, the department who had asked this to happen as well. Once we had done that, the additional instructions also this is part of the ethics part, also to indicate where in a workshop manual, sometimes you have the organizer's telephone numbers or contact details. So we wanted indication of where that was, because we realized that might not be suitable to put online. We also recognize that a lot of these training manuals have extracts from chapters or journal articles, and we wanted to make sure that we capture the citations for that to kind of follow the ethics. But what we really wanted as an end result before being able to put it on the repository was to have basically a clean data set or a spreadsheet that would outline the metadata for each different training manual, but that it would be so consistent that we could import it into the system very quickly. And what we did to kind of cheat that or to enable that is we would set up a Google form that we took the metadata structure, and you can see it on screen now, where we loaded the questions, we identified if they had controlled vocab, if they had to be dates, we set the different parameters and limitations, because we wanted the volunteers who would go and work on capturing this metadata to input the data directly into the form. And we would send out the link, and then they would go through each manual and input it and do all the drop downs and selections. And that was really one of the key parts of this project, was being able to set up this structure before any other work had begun. So we then took this to the workshop, to the volunteers of the department who were working on capturing the metadata, who were going to go through the whole storeroom and all the boxes. And basically each volunteer would pick a manual one at a time. They would also get these little barcoded stickers, which I'll come back to, and then they would enter that metadata in the form. That was the process. And even though we had one workshop to get it started, they were then left to their own time and space and to kind of capture the data as whenever they had that opportunity and capacity to do that. So they were not waiting on us to capture it. Our experience could be outsourced to someone else. And in the end, what we got was exactly what we really wanted, which was a spreadsheet that came from those forms that was extremely structured, that followed all the kind of parameters we had set up, that had separated all the metadata in the different fields. The dates were formatted the right way. We had like a controlled vocab list of words, and we had this in a spreadsheet. And if there's one thing that I like more than digital humanities is actually having tidy data. And this was a great example of having tidy data that happened through the forms. So we captured the metadata. Now it was time for the digitization. And I want to shout out my colleague here, Zoe, who assisted me with this particular slide, as he was kind of part of this process together with Gary November. So we have this very cool piece of equipment that you can see in the corner here called the Scamax 403. It is a feeder scanner, and it can basically just scan pages continuously. I'm not sure exactly what the speed is, but you can kind of get a sense of it. What we did was we took the manuals and we removed all the bindings because they didn't actually need the manuals back. And the moment they became loose leaf, it was possible to feed it into the scanner. We set up the parameters of the software to scan both sides and in grayscale. And we also added this little cool feature where we told it that if you encounter a barcode, separate the document. So we could actually load about 20 different manuals at a time, but because each of the main pages had a barcode, it would immediately say, oh, this is a new PDF. So it would immediately kind of trigger that option. And then we could export it once the scanning was done. We could export it as a bunch of PDF articles that were OCR'd and basically ready to be uploaded. Almost ready, because what we then needed human intervention was to go through and just identify within the metadata where it was said that certain personal information should be redacted, and then we could remove that. And that was one of the great parts, and that's a really quick part of it. And then we get to the putting it on the repository and the showcasing, and I realize I'm running out of time, but I hope you will bear with me as I just introduce this final part to it to show you how we got here. So one of our platforms for showcasing, I guess, more collections of data is called Ibali. And you can actually access it through that link, or you can just see the address there. We use an open source piece of software called Omeka S, together with some imaging software, IIIF. We launched it at the end of 2020. We believe it's among the first instances of this platform in an institution in South Africa. Of course, most of you will recognize Ibali is also a word for story. Our whole idea being there that as you're navigating the site, you actually get to write different stories, but because you can keep clicking through different objects. We have 60 different sites at the moment that you're welcome to explore, with quite a number of items and media pieces that are attached to it. What makes this software so interesting is that it is a web publishing software designed for digital collections. So it's not just publishing web pages, it's actually about publishing specific items and how well those items are kind of connected. And the reason we set this whole platform up is because we wanted to have a central place within the university to be able to present collections of items and use the library experience to be able to enhance it with strong metadata and also have it be part of the semantic web. That was really, really kind of crucial for us, is to put it under the university umbrella like that. The key aspect of what Omeka S does is anytime you upload an item, you have the choice of how much you want to describe it, and what metadata fields you want to use and the structure you want to put it in. And that is one of the key things for us, is you can't just upload a picture or a PDF without going through, well, who created it, what's the title, and all the different metadata fields that you can choose. So every item gets tagged. And that's part of the next step that we did, is we looked at the metadata we captured, and then we created a template on the system that basically captured the title, the start of the workshop, the end of the workshop, what kind of manual it was, what city and province it was in, and this is just a selection of them, the keywords of it. We wanted to set up that metadata template on the system. And then we did a quick conversion of the metadata we had captured. And this went really quickly because in most cases, the data was already clean and we just needed to rename the fields to be able to get the mapping correct on the platform of Ibali. And then we would do an import where we would basically take the Excel spreadsheet or the CSV of what the metadata is. We would upload the files onto the server. And then when we did an import on the system, we would map the fields together. And it would basically result in taking our spreadsheet together with the scanned file, packaging it together and putting it on the system with all the keyword subjects, the identifiers, the title, and all the other metadata we had captured. And in a sense, because we had done a rigorous work on the metadata capturing, and what you can probably see here is that it allowed us to create things like an index so that you can look for very specific topics and see all the other platforms that are tied to it. Even something as cool as a timeline where you can navigate and see how the workshops progressed from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. And of course, at any point, you can jump in and actually browse through and click on a particular manual and read it and download it as you wish. So it's really part of making it as accessible as possible and searchable with all the metadata that's attached. And you can just kind of jump across. So for us, this was a really cool way to kind of put together the knowledge that the library team can offer together with the library team can offer together with what departments kind of want. So the main takeaways for us that is how important metadata is and how library staff, as probably the people in the university institution who are most comfortable and understand metadata, how much they can bring to these projects where there's a large collection of data to look through. Anytime you're doing digitization, though, I mean, of course, the cool part is obviously converting a physical object into a digital one. If you don't have the metadata, it's almost not as useful. So you need to really consider how you're going to add the metadata to this and how you're going to ensure that these two things are linked. And overall, this whole experience just made us aware of how much the role of these two things, especially metadata, can enhance accessibility and discoverability to make these kind of showcase sites more interesting for people to navigate. And if this was one of our earlier projects that we started off, and I really welcome you to explore the rest of Ibali, because you will see a lot of other interesting collections of data, everything from like a theater production rehearsal project to landscape photography, to musical instruments, to conference proceedings. It is all there, and all of those projects follow very much what I've described here in terms of making sure that the right metadata structure is set up and able to be packaged together with the digital objects. And overall, this forms part of what our head of library, Ujala, talks about a lot, is that we at the library take care of collections, but as we take care of them, we're also building connections between people through working with these collections. And that brings me to kind of the end of my case study. Apologies for going a little bit over time, but I hope you got a sense of the work that we do and also how this kind of process can be an example of digital humanities and making knowledge more findable, accessible, and create access to those resources that might be hidden otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muftić. Thank you for sharing. For us at the Nelson Mandela University Library, this is the first, we're just starting now with a project to digitize our Xhosa collection. So we can definitely learn from your experience and we'll use it for benchmarking. But for now, I think we'll just open for questions because I'm sure the colleagues has got a lot of questions to ask.
Sure.
Okay. Colleagues, anyone, if you also have questions, you can put it in the chat or you can just raise your hand, unmute your mic. We have one question here in the chat. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during your digitization projects, and how did you overcome them?
Okay, so I'm going to reference, so I'm not directly involved with all the digitization projects. A lot of stuff comes to me after it's been digitized to put online. I think a lot of challenges with digitization projects come at the beginning to identify how many things need to be digitized. Sometimes it feels like you can finish a digitization project and then the people who are delivering the material be like, oh, we found this whole other box or a whole other selection of stuff that you need to add to it. So taking stock, I think, at the beginning and identifying exactly what needs to be digitized is probably a key part of that. We really try to work on whenever somebody approaches us for digitization to set up that connection. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. Just set up project plan to set up actually the boundaries of the project and how it's going to be captured. With digitization, also, it really depends on what you're being given to digitize. I know, for example, that like if we have an AV studio that deals with like old cassette tapes and pneumatic tapes. We even have a system that we're working on to get old, floppy disks. If some of you have been around when we had those stiffy disks that were like 1.4 megabytes. So like when it's a piece of paper or a photograph, and it's, like you can put it on a scanner and the thing is there. But when it's another more digital or half analog object, like a tape or like a floppy disk, sometimes you're not sure, like if you're not getting the signal out, is it the problem of the tape or is it something wrong with the machine? So those kind of troubleshooting things in the technical sphere can take up quite a lot of time. So ensuring that you have a procedure for double checking, like a standard operating procedure to follow, so that you can ultimately determine where the issue is. And of course, I think lastly, to round off of that, probably a big issue in terms of digitization is storage. Once you digitize all these objects, where are you going to store them? In what different formats? Do you have enough space on whatever storage is provided to you by the university? Are you taking into account, what is where's the end home of whatever you've digitized? Something like Ibali is a showcase platform where we put web versions of the documents, so the smaller versions of the documents, but there are what we call the more original versions of the documents that we want to preserve for long term. And those are bigger and they need to be on a special kind of system for archiving, that we can ensure that if something were to happen with the site, there's always a backup master copy. So yeah, I think those are some of the challenges we faced around digitization.
I also had a question about the minimum tools that's required, and I see Samuel is asking the same on the chat. What tools or minimum infrastructure are required to start the DH project?
I think it really depends on what the DH project is. And I think that's something interesting about digital humanities, that it can mean a number of different things, but it's basically using some kind of computational methods in your humanities research. And at what level do you use it? So like this example that I shared is a digitization, digital humanities project for accessibility. And of course you needed the scanning equipment, and you also needed like this piece of software and infrastructure to be able to host it. But if you're doing a digital humanities project that is doing something it doesn't have to be, it's not a smaller scale, but it's a completely different track. For example, like if you're working with where locations of certain performances happened in the world and you're looking at spatial data, then maybe you just need software that analyzes spatial data. And there is free software for that you can actually use and then output a map. If you're looking at transcribing things, if you are looking at analyzing collections, there's a number of different free tools I think that you can find depending on what it is that your digital humanities project is. So what I think would help with digital humanities is having more of an understanding of, I guess, computational or information science, just to be able to figure out what you can do and what your limitations are, before you kind of look at acquiring the kind of biggest tools. But I would always consider with digital humanities project is to start looking at examples of what other people are doing. I think I would strongly suggest if you're looking at digital humanities, it would be really good for you to develop or spend some time developing programming or coding skills, or even just an understanding of it. You might not actually use that coding and programming in your DH project, but I think it will unlock a lot of the potential of the different humanities projects that you can do. So for me, I think in terms of a tool or a personal skill set, it's more that ability to engage with thinking like a programmer, I guess.
Thank you. We also have another question. What technical proficiencies or expertise did you need to ensure OMIC-S is fully integrated into existing library systems?
Thank you very much for that. So that's something we're still working on in terms of linking our main library search page to the items that are found here. There are modules. So this piece of software, Omeka-S, comes with a standard package. It's open source, and we need to work together with our ICTS team to get it running, but we actually administer the platform, we install the modules, but there's a module within it that actually says, do you want to expose your items to, I'm going to get it's an OMI, it's one of the kind of languages to talk to other repositories. So we can expose it and then we can share it. And if people search something on our main landing page, they could get taken to what is Onibali. We're still working on finalizing that because we have something called, we have a special section on Ibali that we call a curator's corner, where we allow researchers to create more, I want to say, not academic, but more creative curations that are a bit more, it's almost like they're writing a thesis, but they're actually using online technologies and the semantic web to be able to construct these different things. And this is an example of one such site that has that, where it's both an essay, but also metadata presented as part of it. And what we are trying to work on now is to figure out how do we only expose certain parts of Omeka-S, only the kind of either UCT library collections or the official UCT collections, but not necessarily all the items. So that's kind of a part of it. But it does help in terms of technical expertise and experience. Once again, having a bit of computational background, having a good reputation, a good relationship with your ICTS team is crucial. Because it just helps you understand and all of this. It helps you understand how the system works and how to tie it together. What is helpful about Omeka-S is that it has quite a big user community. And of course, the software is free and it has a strong forum that you can ask questions. So you can actually learn, you can adapt and learn fairly quickly.
I see another question here from Faith Blachnout. Faith, do you want to read your question, please?
Good morning. Hi. I would like to know, how do you handle digital preservation to ensure that digitized content remains accessible and sustainable over a long time?
Thank you. And I think this is also probably ties into Zukisa's question in the chat as well. So yeah, digital preservation is a big thing for us. It's a bit of a challenge to get it working. I think in terms of digitization, the first thing that is important is that when you digitize an item, you try to capture it in almost the highest possible resolution or quality that is relevant to that, because that ensures that you've captured the most data. And then what we've been looking at through UCT and through the libraries is to figure out, we've been wanting to set up a preservation system that is both, we realized it's not just software, it's a whole series of policies and looking at how to basically advocate for it throughout the university. We want to make sure, in digital preservation, they talk a lot about, okay, you have to make sure that you have the most original form of the file. You have to make sure that that file format will not change over time. So for example, if we save something in a Word doc file, that it's better to save it in a text file because the text file will never go away, while a Word file will always keep changing and might stop working. So we look at then trying to figure out, we want to save it in that format. And then you need a system that every few years or almost continuously will keep checking for if there's any changes to the little bits that make up the file. And that also involves like looking at lots of storage solutions. So we've looked at a number of different options in the last few years in terms of like the software that could do this. We've approached external kind of software providers. We've also looked at some internal solutions. We're still exploring our options, but we do recognize that within the next 5 years, we are really need to set up the preservation system and outline a different procedure. I think our awareness of what preservation is and what is required is quite high. And we recognize, of course, that so many of these, and I think this ties to Zakisa's question, the cultural artifacts and knowledge, like all of this material, and we have many different pieces of data, and the two things that we can control is making
Good
sure
morning,
that.
and how are you? So far, so good. Oh, I never got somebody to do my hair the whole of this weekend.
Sorry.
So the two things to make sure about is that you need to have, when you are digitizing, capture it the most authentically possible quality that you can, and then you capture that metadata that is tied together with it, and make sure those two are linked. Make sure you have a good file naming convention for the digital object so that you will never lose a file name. Those are the things you can control right now for preservation down the line. If you have that, then you can preserve like anything, but then you need to look at what are the systems and what you can afford and what you can look at through your ICTS department in terms of storage, in terms of setting that up. But in terms of what library can do, it's very much digitize it with high quality, ensure that the metadata is comprehensive, and ensure that those two things are linked. I think for me, those are the three key things that you can do, even if you don't have a preservation system running immediately.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? I don't know if I can see if anyone's hand is up. If you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself. Nothing. I have another question.
Sure.
Do you know that if you want to digitize something that is out of print, what would the process be?
But you have the copy of it, right?
No, ours may be lost because we have a couple of Xhosa books that out of print and it's lost, so we can't replace it.
So you would need to,
Or
I guess.
if we have a last copy and it's no more in print, would we be able to digitize that?
Well, I guess if you have it, you can digitize it. I think the ethics around putting it online is probably what needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And like, I think I'm not an expert in the copyright laws, but I know that there's a statute of how many years since it's been published where it could enter into public domain. So that would need to be looked at.
Okay.
But I think if you have a copy of it, even if you cannot place it online, I would suggest, of course, digitize it, keep it in the highest quality. And even if you online, you just create a metadata record that says, look, we have a copy of this, but we cannot put it online for now because of so and so reasons, then that still allows people to know that you have it and they can contact you about it. And then you can negotiate ways of how to send them a copy. But I would look at, I know we've actually frequently reached out to the law faculty for advice on certain of those things. And sometimes we've erred on the side of even sometimes putting some stuff online, but saying that, look, we're doing this under the proviso that this is it's for learning, it's not for commercial gain. We're trying to make this accessible. And if you are the owner of this work and have an issue with this, please contact us. So to kind of go with that as a way forward. It depends how much, I guess, risk you want to take. But I know that a few times we've indicated we have a metadata record of it. I think one of the collections that we actually have is a research project at UCT that was digitizing the old copies of the early Black press, so Imo Zabatsundu and Isigidimi Samatmosa, and these came from the National Library. And the National Library said, look, we don't want the digital images to be on your platform because people should still contact us. So what we did here was we have a link to the National Library of South Africa, so you can actually look at the full link. But if you want their OCR'd version of the document, you can just click on here and see it. So it's about working together to ensure that everybody's work is respected, but also to try to balance that together with making it as accessible to as many people as possible.
Okay. Thank you so much. We will definitely go back to the repositories here and see how we can learn from it. I see some hands up here. I can't. We should see. Busi, you can go.
Good morning. I just wanted to find out with Omeka S, is it possible to create multiple templates when you need to store different data formats?
Yes. So the templates are specific for metadata. And I'm just showing you our back end here. And each of these here is a different template. And it's geared towards a different type of item, I think kind of what you are asking. So we have a template for a person, which has a different metadata structure to if you want to put a video.
Yes,
And then what we've also, our whole system with it is we have a few of the Ibali default ones that we want everyone to start with because those should be common across all the collections. But then if you are working on something specific, you can copy that one and then add your own so that you can actually, yes. So just to give you an example, like here's a person and, you have full name, family name, biography, nationality, birthplace. So that's identifying an individual in case we're talking about a person. But if I go to one of our other collections, they added fields for traditional name, other name, to kind of customize it to suit their particular needs.
All right.
So it is possible to do that. It's actually one of the cool features of it because it allows you to keep structure, but also be flexible at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Sibeko, you can go.
Thank you. My question is just on timeline of the project, particularly the law one. How long did that take you, the conceptualization of the actual project and also getting it out there? Thank you.
The timeline, that's a good question. Thank you. The timeline's a bit confusing because it started before the pandemic, then the pandemic kind of happened. So it was really in bits and pieces, and it was depending also on the funding that the law department had for this project. But I think if I were to kind of package it all together and kind of streamline it, I would say it was probably about a 6-month project in terms of like complete. If in a normal environment, I would say it was about a 6-month project from them approaching to actually getting it online, maybe 6 to 8 months. But yeah, the pandemic threw us off, and they did it in 2 different stages, and it felt like it took longer than it should have. But for a lot of that time, it was almost like nothing was happening because we were waiting on them to finish the metadata or to do other parts. This one, this low one is a fairly simple one because it only has one type of material. If you look at some of our other collection sites, like the drama one, there's a lot of interlinking data there, and this one takes a lot longer to set up.
Thank you. Londeka, you can go.
Morning. I just want to find out about the support of Omeka S. You mentioned that it's open source it's open source, sorry. I just want to find out just about the support. Is the support adequate? Yeah. Is there any extra fees with regards to the support, even though it's open source? And I also want to find out with regards to digital preservation. Perhaps you might have answered in the beginning. I joined in a bit late. Does UCT use Archive Mathematica for digital preservation? Thank you.
Cool, thank you for those. So Omeka S is completely open source. We don't really pay anyone within the organization to help us or assist us. The forum has, because I'm the principal administrator of Omeka S. So the forum that they have that you can join at any point really brings the whole community together, and it's very rare. I've asked a lot of questions on here and assistance, especially at the start, and everybody has been very open in sharing, and the team that build it are incredibly, they will point you to the right resources. So you don't necessarily need to pay anything extra. I think it might be useful if you're starting out with Omeka S to have maybe someone just walk you through the different stages of it and the way to start thinking about it. I think it would just help, because I think for us, when we started and we had no idea about it, it took us a good 2 years to kind of fully understand, okay, this is how everything fits together and works. But I think once you get it going, you don't really need that. I do suggest that it does need quite a good bond between ICTS and whoever is working at the library with it to ensure that it stays running. We are not, in terms of preservation, we are not currently running Archive Mathematica, but it is something that we are exploring to do. And we did have an instance in the past, and we keep kind of playing around with it, but we don't have an operational instance at the moment.
All right, thank you so much. I just want to find out about this forum. Can I just go online and then find it? Okay, I see that.
I'll put a link.
Okay, I'll screenshot that. Thanks. Thank you.
Also, if you have any further Omeka S questions, it is my favorite platform. So you're also more than, you can always reach out to me if you want more time or more questions answered about the platform.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat. Did you apply metadata standards to metadata creation to ensure consistency?
Yes, we did. We tried to do that as much as possible. We really tried to stick to Dublin Core as our kind of founding principle and follow the rules set out by that. But yes, with all of these sites, if you look through it, even we have a climate change library resource, that consistency for us is key. And whenever we work with external depositors or people who want to showcase, we keep going back, you need to be consistent with your keywords and consistent with the fields. And we really try to run a tight procedure around that. So yes, we did apply.
Okay, we'll take the last one here in the chat as well. How does metadata play a role in library digitization projects, and how does it facilitate resource discovery and access?
It's huge. Metadata is if we didn't have metadata, we wouldn't know how to find anything. Even now you have people basically building chat GPTs that will just extract metadata out of large texts, because if we don't have the metadata, nothing can be found. You put something in a Google search engine, you won't look at it. You won't be able to find it. A lot of the stuff, there's I think there's lots of great resources online that are not findable because the metadata is not there about it. It facilitates discovery and access because those keywords, the structured metadata, the fact that it's not just text, but it's actually structured and identified as metadata, immediately is picked up by search engines. So our Ibali site gets a search console linked to it. All the pages get indexed, and the metadata for each page kind of gets lifted out so that you can find things. But I mean, even just quickly here is, even within the newspaper project, one of the things they started doing is they started actually adding metadata, not just per newspaper edition, but per article, so that you can actually like say, well, I want to read an announcement. And then you see, oh, okay, there's 518 announcements from many different newspapers. And I'm looking for something that is a news summary. So all of this thing, so that there's no announcement that's a news summary, but you can kind of click on it and then read specifically that. Like for library systems, for digital metadata is really key. It's the gold. Yeah.
Thank you. Our time is about up now. Thank you so much, Dr. Muftić. I just want to hand over to Dr. Johannes Sibeko. Okay, while we wait for him, I see there is another question here. How about systems integration with reference to library software?
So I think, as I tried to mention a bit earlier, we are still something that we're kind of working towards in terms of linking it to the big library sphere. But Omeka S does have modules that allows for that. But I think there are also, depending on what your library software is, I know that there's some digitization modules that can be added where you can actually upload digital resources to it directly. And that might be a quicker and more efficient way to do it. But I think that has a cost attached to it.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I started with unmuting, then I put on my camera, and then I forgot and muted myself. Sorry for that. I was just thanking everyone who took time to join us today, and to our speaker, Sanjin, for agreeing to deliver the presentation for us today. Unfortunately, because it is December, and people are busy, we assumed that an hour would be enough for all of these conversations. So we didn't want to take up too much time and scare people away so that they don't want to attend anymore. We are very sorry about the time issue, but thank you very much for taking your time. I would also like to express my gratitude to Jacqui, the Deputy Dean for the Faculty of Humanities at Nelson Mandela University, who continues to inspire me and the Digital Humanities Hub as she oversees the whole hub. And a special thanks to Juneth and Faith, who worked tirelessly to help frame and organize the event, ensuring that everything runs smoothly, and their efforts behind the scenes. Thank you so much. The efforts made a difference. And a thanks to the Digital Humanities Association of Southern Africa for their valuable input and representation. So the president of the association has sent his apologies that he is held up somewhere, so he's not able to attend today. And then, of course, we also thank the University of Cape Town for allowing us to have Sanjin for our event here today. And we are hoping that we will see each other again next year for the Day of Digital Humanities that will be announced sometime next year. And thank you so much. Sanjin has also provided his contact details in the chat if you want to continue the discussion. And I think I've acknowledged everyone in all the universities in and outside South Africa. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much.